I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the Solihull Holocaust Memorial Day service. I'm Andy Beard, the Police Commander at Solihull, and I'll be taking us through today's proceedings. The Holocaust Memorial Day is marked internationally on the 27th of January each year to remember the 6 million Jews who were killed during the Holocaust and those killed during the more recent genocides across the world. I will now invite the Worship Hall, the Mayor of Solihull, Councillor Ken Meeson, to deliver his address.
Thank you, and can I add my welcome also and particularly to the High Sheriff of the West Midlands, David Moorcroft, and Deputy Lieutenant Clive Stone and Mrs. Stone. You are all welcome. It's 78 years since the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp and the day when the world woke up to the horrors of the Holocaust. So it's important that 78 years later, we continue to annually commemorate Holocaust Day, because tragically, the liberation of Auschwitz and the other death camps did not see the end of the cruelty of ethnic cleansing, the persecution of minorities, and the terrorizing of innocent families. Just ordinary people. And that is our theme today, ordinary people. Because sadly and tragically, we have seen the frightening spectre of Holocaust in Cambodia, in Bosnia, in Rwanda, and the same inhuman tactics are happening in other parts of the world. Today, in parts of Ukraine, we learn of Russian aggression targeting the civilian population, and again, we learn of mass graves, of summary executions, and of terrible atrocities. And these are just ordinary people who suffer. They are people just like us, and we are thankful that we live in a part of the world where we do not suffer that persecution. We are spared the horrors of the Holocaust. But it was ordinary people also who stood by and let it happen, or just ignored it, whether in Nazi Germany or in those other countries where it has happened and is still happening across the world. So we must keep alive the awareness of the Holocaust, of genocide wherever it is happening. It's our duty and it's our determination to challenge prejudice, to stand up to hatred, and to speak out against injustice for the ordinary people of this world. And we should also feel humbled by the bravery and the human spirit of those ordinary people who survived, who clung to life and won their own victory over the hatred and the suffering. Just recently, I've read two books that I found particularly moving. One was The Choice by Edith Eger, who tells of the horrors that she survived in the concentration camps, the many times when she almost lost her life. But she, after the war, became a renowned psychiatrist who helped many other people to overcome the difficulties which they had experienced in their own lives. And the other was The Last Green Valley, the story of the Martel family persecuted across Europe. But eventually, those who survived made a new life in the United States and became successful and leaders of their own communities. And today we have our speaker, who also comes from a family that survived.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Each year, we are fortunate enough to have poetry readings from local young people at this service. This year, we welcome pupils from Langley School.
They say eyes are a window to the soul, pools of dreams, once mine, stolen, taint by the scythe of death. Once inhabit hopes fallen, mask unimaginable horrors, the call for death beckon. They say eyes are a window to the soul, capable to experience the miracles of life, yet mine encumber burdens of camp, the cost of a bitter strife. Torn from my telltale heart, am I deserving of life? They say to lend a hand, but mine are ruined by the touch of pain. Reach for the grasp of loved ones, torn apart in vain. Driven from the warmth of home, strung together in rows of chain. They say to lend a hand, though not one like mine, dependent on your class or race, don't converge outside the line. Can't open up nor speak the truth, don't tell them we're not fine. They say age is not a number, yet my time can be counted on my hands. 10 years, 10 bullets, 10 men, lost faster than quicksand. A sickening act of discriminatory violence to declare independence, gain land. They say age is not a number, so why have I been left? A boy, not a man, of inexperience, stole my life, accosting theft. Inhabited homes no more, wiped out from right to left. They say turn a deaf ear, as we all scream in silence, pleading for the help from others, unanswered, commit acts of defiance. Horrors consume our ordinary lives, fall to our knees, beg for guidance. They say turn a deaf ear, to only block out our suffering, put up a facade of ignorance, no chance of ever recovering. Fuel the fire of hatred, kill the tired heart fluttering. They say so they don't see. They don't see through the window to my soul. I hope they don't see.
I, once strong, now bend and weep, tired, greying at one face deep. I cry, beg for all this to stop, the cease of gas to halt his big circus top. I watch my people scream their last gratitude at death and its master, his lucky good mood. The grace of peace, the bless of a gun, to tear a paper existence until it is done. We are pieces on a board of a barbed wire gate, which opens and closes to a sealed, printed fate. We bear our tattoos with wide blinking eyes. We are numbers, subhumans, people, what lies. Our faded pajamas, sole proof of a life, the past and present of a father, a wife. Bound to our duty of his blood-coated plan, cracked skulls, lost souls in an all-Jewish ban. We are dragged feet, sunken eyes, resolve rotted with age. Skeletons uphold by this famed metal cage, which falls through the motions of a soft-spoken name, pumped with ashes and Third Reich fame. Yet still I plead for the right to remember, a candle of hope, just one last dying ember, and try to recall the girl I used to be, the ordinary one who knew what it was to be free, who laughed and danced and sang in the rain, who gritted her teeth and smiled through pain, who shouted and screamed in all her youth, blinded to all of the world's hidden truths. When ordinary was a name which she welcomed with ease, that she took for granted without price or fee, who loved and was loved in a world so far, not ruled by his calling, his chains, his bars, who had held her mother's hand, not knowing it was the last time she could love before forgetting her past. Filth, they say, scum they project. For life as a Jew must surely be wrecked. So this girl I forgot, and in her place took I an old woman of an unknown face, who has forgotten who she is and what she is worth, here in this death camp of her shameful birth, who labours only for the dawn of a new day, where the children of tomorrow shall be shown their path and way. Their ancestors were people, normal, perfect, not designed to fit in to a Jew-only slot. Shaped, created, to live and to hold, life as it came, not animals to mould. Who lived for the day when Auschwitz would fall, its captives, people, viewed as God's gift in all. When Jews would hold hands with all mankind, and the right to be accepted would be celebrated worldwide.
We were ordinary people, sisters and brothers, uncles and lovers, granddads and aunties, fathers and mothers. We were ordinary people. Policemen, postmen, butchers and bakers, sellers, shop owners, tailors and waiters, and you stole that from us. Like an alley urchin, a runaway thief, like a cruel wolf, all bones and teeth. We were ordinary people, until you stole us from our houses, pretending to be dressed, and made us work our hands away at machines red with rust. We were ordinary people, until death in military uniform came for us.
The 27th of January, a day to remember, burdens people have carried and those who are embers. People's voices silenced, too scared to stand up as they watch sadness unfold and have to do what they're told. Dreams down the drain, innocent Jews murdered, all suffering and pain to each story that occurred. Perpetrators abuse their power with intentions to destroy, making people cower, bringing anything but joy. We must remember all those who were embers. Innocent eyes who had done everything right, those were the Jews who were caught up in the fight. Faces glazed with fear because there's no room for difference, stripped from head to toe for years, not even able to wince. Families torn apart, praying to survive with all their heart until 1945. Some had hope, lots had fright. It was so hard to cope, many couldn't see the light. We must remember all those who were embers. We must stand up for what's right and speak up loud. Try to forget the fright and stand up tall and proud. We are all ordinary people, so we must unite and climb the steep hill to spread the light. We must remember all those who are embers. We must remember all those who are embers.
Thank you all for your really thought-provoking poems and very well presented. We're now going to watch a short video from the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust about the Cambodian genocide.
Hello?
Apologies, ladies and gents, slight technical hitch there.
Hello?
If I can introduce George Vulcan next. So I'd like to introduce George Vulcan, who, as you can see, will be joining us remotely, and he'll be talking to us about his own experiences and to raise awareness of the genocide.
Hello? Yes, I'm sorry it's on audio only. Can you hear me now? Yes, my own experiences are very much easier than that of most people, because I was one of the very lucky ones who escaped just in time with my parents. But I certainly did have experiences very early on of what happened when the Nazis came in. I had a very happy childhood. I went to school, normal, like all the other kids. There was no difference between children who were Jewish or non-Jewish, and I scarcely knew I was Jewish. This changed dramatically when the Nazis came in. Immediately, I was told I should sit at the back of the class with another Jewish boy. We were not allowed to speak to an Aryan, i.e. Christian children, and they were not allowed to speak to us. We were not allowed to go out into the playground during the breaks, but still we went to school. And one day I was told I was no longer allowed to come to school, not because of anything I'd done, but because who I was, being Jewish. So I was sent to a Jewish school. The Jewish school, we had Jewish teachers, because they had also been thrown out of the normal state schools, and our lessons were normal. What wasn't normal, however, was that every day, as we came out of school, we were welcomed, inverted commas, by the Hitler Youth in their very smart uniforms, and they were well equipped with rotten fruit and stones. And as we came out of school, they started throwing stones at us and the rotten fruit, and then they rushed forward, picked up one or two of us, including me on occasion, and beat us up. And that continued for quite some time. And then one day, a patrol of German soldiers came around the corner, and I thought that was it. But in fact, the German soldiers chased away the Hitler Youth, said this shouldn't happen, patted us on the shoulder. Sure enough, from that time on, we could go to school normally. But that wasn't for very long, because our school was closed, and I started what turned out to be a very long holiday. But unfortunately, it wasn't much of a holiday, because everywhere there were signs up saying no entry for Jews. In some cases in parks, it said no dogs or Jews allowed. Effectively, it meant I had to stay at home. My father had lost his business. He was also forced to stay at home. This was a very unpleasant time, as you can imagine. Then one day my father had a phone call, which was either a threat or a warning, saying we have to leave as soon as possible. My father took this as a very strong hint, and next morning we took the very first train out of Vienna to get to Paris. By some quirk, we actually had Czechoslovak nationality, not Austrian, and that had helped us initially, but no longer. But it did enable us to escape, to get as far as the border, and we got to France. Once we were in France, it was we were free. The only snag was none of us could speak French, and as far as the money was concerned, we had none. We relied on the Jewish charity, and also we had distant relations. But at least we were free. My uncle said he would come and join us, and they were proposing to come to England, where we heard that there were opportunities to set up a business up in the north of England. But he came. My father said to him, "Don't go back, you won't be able to get out again." Well, my uncle said, "No, there's no risk at all, because he'd been a frontline fighter in the First World War. And also his wife, he had to fetch his wife. His wife wouldn't come unless she could bring her mother and the disabled brother. So he went back to Vienna to fetch him. But I'm afraid that was the last we ever saw of any of them. All of them were murdered. We waited for quite some time, and my father decided to go on ahead, because at that time he was still hoping that his brother Leo would join him. And we came to England. First of all, we had great problems in getting into England at New Haven, because we couldn't prove that we had the means or the papers to set up a business. My uncle had all these, and we were still hoping would come and join us, which of course he never did, but we did get in. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Hi, George. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we, I'm sorry you can't see me. I don't know what's wrong. But anyway, we went to England, and my father was not allowed to work at all. I couldn't speak English. I went to school for a very short time in London, where nobody could speak German. I couldn't speak English. Wasn't much use. I then went on to a school in Hove, where they actually had a Jewish class, and a class for foreigners, and I learned English. But meanwhile, my family was still left in Vienna. Now, we were in touch with them, and I started giving talks when I discovered the really heartbreaking correspondence which started between Vienna and London. My father desperately trying to get permission for the people in Vienna to come. He did succeed in getting 3 of my aunts out, but none of the rest. And so the rest of the family, most of them, were still in Vienna when war broke out, which included my grandparents, aunts, and uncles. My father was one of 10. None of those who were in Vienna when war broke out ever managed to escape. All of them were murdered by the Nazis. My father eventually, when the war broke out, my father did get permission to start on war work, and I slowly started learning English, and eventually just became an ordinary English schoolboy. Well, more or less, anyway. But the rest of the family, I'm afraid, all of them were lost. There's three. I also forgot to mention my cousin. I had a cousin who was 6 years old, and she was able to come to Britain on a Kindertransport, which allowed 10,000 children to come to Britain. But I don't know if you can imagine what it was like. First of all, for a 6-year-old child to be told by its mother that you're going to go to a nice country, you have to learn a new language, and we'll follow on later. In fact, Elsa's mother knew there was no way she could follow on. And not only that, Elsa's father had already been arrested and sent to Dachau concentration camp. In fact, he was murdered there in 1941. But Elsie never saw her mother again. For her, it must have been very, very traumatic, suddenly being sent away by her mother. She didn't know where she was going. She couldn't speak English. We were in London by that time, so at least she could come to us. But eventually, she also had to accept that she wouldn't see her mother again. But it was very, very difficult, not only for the victims, but for those of us who were, and particularly my father, who was trying to rescue more people. Altogether, out of 10 in the family, we managed to get 3 of my aunts out, and Elsie. But there was, until war broke out, there was a correspondence, and the people in Vienna writing, "Don't you realize how terrible conditions are? You know, do more to get us out." And my father, he kept copies of all correspondence, carbon copies, writing back saying, "We are doing all we can to get you out." Eventually, out of 10 siblings, 3 of my aunts came, and my father, of course, was already in London, but the rest we lost. Well, they were murdered. For me, as a schoolboy, I was, not as aware of the terrible things which were happening. But I often heard my parents crying at night. My mother had her only surviving sister still in Vienna with her husband, who incidentally was my favorite uncle, and they corresponded until war broke out. But again, they couldn't get out, and they were also murdered. As far as I was concerned, I was able to get over it eventually. I realized, that I had family in Vienna, but as a schoolboy and later on as going to university, I was able to, well, not forget it, but to get over it. This did not apply to my parents. And this must have happened to many families where part of the family escaped. All we can do now is we have a memorial in Vienna, remembering where the people were, and in front of the house from which they were finally deported. Because as we have mentioned, people who were left in Vienna were collected together into collection flats, very small flats, several families in one flat. And from there, they were collected and then sent on in cattle trucks to concentration camps. And of those who had been left behind, none survived. I don't know if anybody would like to ask questions, but I've done this very, very quickly.
Hi, George. I don't think we're going to do questions at the moment, just because we haven't really got that set up. But thank you for your statement, and we'll move on to the next speaker if that's okay. Thank you, George.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's rather garbled, but yeah.
No, don't worry. You've been great. Thank you very much, George.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
I'll just reflect on that. George, if you're still with us, thank you for sharing your experiences there. Some real poignant words, and I'm sure it brings it into reality for everybody that's been listening today. So thank you for your time, George.
Okay.
I'd now like to invite Rabbi Pink to speak, please. And again, he'll be joining us via video link.
Mr. Mayor, Chief Superintendent Beard, High Sheriff David Moorcroft, Deputy Lieutenant Clive Stone, Mr. Vulcan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today we remember the victims of one of the greatest crimes of humans against humans. Remember what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. Today we remember what happens when victims cry for help and there is no one listening. We remember how low humanity thinks when it demonizes others and sees them as less than human, when it chooses the way of death and not the path of life, when it forgets that those who are not in our image are nonetheless in God's image. Today we remember the victims, and although we cannot bring the dead back to life, we can and must honor their memory by fighting for the sanctity of life. And though we cannot change the past, each of us, by challenging evil, can help change the future. Today we remember the 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million children, perished in the Holocaust, and the victims of the subsequent genocide in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. We remember them all. Remember each and every one who was beaten, tortured, hung, shot, burnt and gassed during the 6 darkest years of our history. And the killing didn't just stop with Jews. The mentally ill, the physically handicapped, gypsies and gays were murdered simply because they were different. The Holocaust was exceptional in the scientific precision with which it was carried out. It was unprecedented in the sheer scale on which it was conceived. At the height of the slaughter, the Nazis diverted trains from the Russian front to transport victims to the extermination camp. As Emil Fackenheim put it, the Holocaust was evil for evil's sake. And today we remember. The theme of today's commemoration is ordinary people. The ordinary people who let genocide happen. The ordinary people who actively perpetrated genocide. The ordinary people who became rescuers during a genocide. And the ordinary people who were murdered. Let me share with you a story of one such ordinary person, and how she was able to rebuild her life through the support of others. Ava knew that she could not hold on much longer. She felt her life ebbing away. She looked at her two young daughters. How could she leave them? They were too young, too innocent to fend for themselves in a world gone mad. In a flash, she realized that there were no more choices to make. She must say goodbye, or she would leave them without even a farewell. If things had been different, she would have been celebrating her 35th birthday. Fegele, take care of Suri. She's your only sister left. If you don't take care of her, she'll die. Promise me, Fegele, that you'll do it. You're a big girl. She's so little. Fegele held her mother's hand as it slowly became cold and stiff. The next years were full of the indescribable horror that we've learned to speak about without emotion because we have no other choice. Fegele did whatever she had to save herself and her little sister. Nothing remained sacred except the promise that she whispered to her mother. She became a capo. The Nazis enjoyed the spectacle of a Jewish girl breaking the bones of other Jewish girls, and worse, all in order to survive another day. They took pleasure in the indignity and cruelty that they'd forced upon her. It was almost the end. The rumors were indeed true. The Allies were prevailing. Within days, the nightmare would be over. Not for Fegele. 2 days before the camp was liberated, one of the Nazi guards waited until she'd left the barracks for a moment. He found the little girl's hiding place, the one he'd pretended not to see. Within seconds, it was over. He left Suri's corpse in the middle of the floor and waited near the door so he wouldn't have to miss even a second of the unfolding climax of the melodrama that he'd created. It was not long in coming. Even the women of Fegele, beaten, humiliated, and almost destroyed, wept with her. In the course of time, she joined the ranks of the living dead that haunted post-war Israel. She spoke to no one, answered no questions. She walked aimlessly through the promised land, calling nowhere home. Her life had ended 2 months before her 16th birthday. The years that mercilessly passed since that day were irrelevant and burdensome. She wouldn't accept hospitality, clothing, or anything more than the most minimal level of shelter from the elements. She was filthy, repulsive, life-ridden, and clearly not quite sane. When Rabbi Halberstam, the Klausenberger rebel, was informed that there was a young lady wandering the streets of Netanya, resisting all attempts to help her, he called his assistant and gave him a non-negotiable mission. Bring her here. I will find a way to help her. It took 6 months of profound endurance, but eventually the breakthrough was made. Her story came out in torrents. She left nothing to the imagination, spared herself no humiliation. When she reached the crescendo, she screamed again and again, and it was all for nothing. Nothing. They killed her anyway. It was all for nothing. She tore at her hair and scratched her arms mercilessly. The rabbi sat quietly, waiting for the moment when she'd be able to hear another voice. You did the wrong thing, he said, but you are not an evil person. You have forgotten the true villain. If it were not for the Nazis, may their names be blotted out, none of this would have happened. It was they, not you, who were the villains. It was they, not you, who forced you to make tragic choices. It was they, not you, who killed your family, burned their bodies, and ruined everything that they touched. You can repent. You are just as much a victim as your victims. The rabbi's words brought about the closest thing to revival of the dead that we're likely to see until the Messiah arrives. We can choose to define ourselves through the evil that envelops us due to our bad choices. Or we can move on, reject the evil, and rediscover the inherent good within each of us. If we, those left behind, use the passion and values of our loved ones who are not here with us to inspire and infect our daily lives and behavior, then we will ensure that they are in some very real sense still alive. Their own dreams and ideals will continue to exist in a very tangible way in the lives of the people touched by their love and goodness. Close your eyes for a moment and hear the whispering voices of the 6 million souls. Give your children and yourself the gift of a meaningful life, full of acts of kindness and goodness. Share with them the gift of charity, of loving kindness, study, and prayer. That way, in our daily lives, they will continue to live. No, this will never bring us comfort for the unfathomable tragedy, but it will deprive Adolf Hitler from claiming victory. And this is something that is within the reach of ordinary people like me and you. Let us now observe a minute of silent reflection in memory of all the victims of genocide throughout the ages. Let me conclude with the following short prayer. Almighty God, help us to remember and to learn. May you, who has given us life, teach us to hold it sacred, in faithfulness to you and generosity to those around us, so that by reaching out in love, we may turn enemies into friends. Through our prayers and actions, help us to stand together with those who are suffering, so that light may banish all darkness, love will prevail over hate, and good will triumph over evil. May you, who make peace in high places, help us make peace on earth. May he who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, Aaron, David, and Solomon, heal all those innocent victims of conflict throughout the world. May they be restored to health and vigor, a healing of the body and a healing of the soul. May this be your will, and let us say amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Pink. That draws to the conclusion the formalities of today's service. I think it's incumbent on all of us just to reflect on what we've heard today, so we can in our own ways make sure that it doesn't continue in the future. I'd like to thank all the participants in today's ceremony and for all of you for attending. There is a book of remembrance to my right, just on the desk at the far end there, and I'd like to ask you just to again reflect on today and to take the opportunity to record your comments in the book. Thank you all once again for attending.